The meeting room fell silent as Ryan Mitchell slapped the folder down on the conference table. His voice carried that fake concern managers practice in HR seminars. "You're under internal investigation," he announced, eyes sweeping across my colleagues before settling on me with barely concealed satisfaction. Everyone shifted away from me like I had the plague. My name is Noah Garrison, 48 years old, and until that moment I thought I was just Carl Weber, mid-level accountant at Alpine Financial, but I wasn't. I was an FBI agent who'd spent 11 months building this fake identity, and now my cover was about to be blown. For what exactly? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline surge. Unauthorized system access, data transfers during unusual hours, excessive interest in accounts outside your department. Ryan ticked off each accusation like he was reading from a script. Pretty serious stuff, Carl. The team avoided eye contact. Deanna Reed, who had borrowed my stapler that morning with a smile, suddenly found her notepad fascinating. Rob Martinez, who had invited me to his daughter's birthday last weekend, examined his watch like time might stop if he stared hard enough. "We've been monitoring your activities for weeks." Ryan continued, clearly enjoying himself. "The evidence is substantial. My palms stayed dry, not from fear, from calculation. This was happening 3 weeks ahead of schedule, but I'd been in worse situations during my Army days. Sarah would have been proud of how calm I stayed. God, I missed her. I'd like to see this evidence," I said. "That's not how this works. Sign this." He slid a document across the table. "Simple admission of improper conduct. We'll make this discreet. You'll be escorted out today with 2 weeks severance." The alternative hung unspoken in the air. "Don't sign and they'd make an example of me. And if I refuse?" I asked. His smile tightened, "Then things get less pleasant." Much less. The team watched this exchange like spectators at a car crash. These people who'd praised my work yesterday now waited to see how thoroughly I'd be destroyed. I reached for my phone. "This isn't a negotiation." Ryan snapped. "You don't get to call anyone." I ignored him, dialing with deliberate calm. Military training kicked in. Stay focused. Execute the mission. "Hello, is this the FBI?" I maintained unwavering eye contact with Ryan. "Yes, this is Agent Garrison. The bridge is compromised. I repeat, the bridge is compromised." Ryan lunged across the table, reaching for my phone. "What the hell do you think? Code yellow at location Sunflower?" I continued, dodging his grasp with reflexes honed by years of combat training. "Request immediate backup." Chaos erupted. My supervisor knocked over his chair, scrambling to reach me. 2 senior managers bolted toward the door. The remaining team members froze, confusion replacing their judgment. "He's bluffing," Ryan shouted, his face reddening. "Security." I stood my ground, using the same calm I'd maintained under enemy fire in Afghanistan. "Am I?" The security guard appeared at the doorway, looking uncertain. For one heart-stopping moment, he moved toward me instead of Ryan. Had my message failed? Was my team not in position? Then came the thunder of footsteps in the hallway. "Federal agents, everyone stay where you are." Ryan's face transformed from rage to disbelief as a dozen agents flooded the room. My actual colleagues, not the strangers I'd pretended to work alongside for nearly a year. "This is ridiculous," Ryan backed away. "We were following standard procedure for employee misconduct." "Save it," said Agent Mason Ford. "Handcuffs already out. We've heard enough over the wire he's been wearing." My colleagues stared at me, comprehension dawning in their eyes. I wasn't Carl Weber from accounting after all. As Ryan was read his rights, our eyes locked. His held something I'd waited 11 months to see. The realization that he wasn't untouchable after all. The beginning of justice for 1,200 people who had no idea what had been happening to their money. But this wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. Let me tell you how this all started. 3 years ago, my wife Sarah died from a heart attack at 45. The stress killed her. Stress from watching our retirement savings disappear through a scheme almost identical to what Alpine was running. Small fees, mysterious charges, money that vanished bit by bit until we couldn't afford her heart medication. I'd been a forensic accountant for 23 years before that, good at spotting financial irregularities. Started right out of college at 25. Worked my way up through various firms. But when it happened to us, I was just another victim. The shame of not seeing it coming, of failing to protect my own wife, ate at me every day. After Sarah's funeral, I sold everything and joined the FBI. At 45, most people thought I was crazy. Career change that late in life? But I had a mission now. My Army background from my 20s helped. They liked the discipline, the ability to follow orders, the tactical thinking. More importantly, they needed someone who understood both finance and field operations. When the pattern of complaints about Alpine Financial reached our office 18 months ago, I recognized it immediately. Hundreds of ordinary people reporting mysterious fees and vanishing funds. Small amounts, just enough to fly under the radar. The same pattern that had killed my Sarah. Nobody would steal just $50. My supervisor had said when I first brought the pattern to his attention. They would if they took $50 from thousands of people. I'd countered. Do the math. $5,000 in Tom is $2,000 in dollars per month. That's $720,000 per year, and that's just one fee type. The numbers told the story, but we needed proof. 3 weeks of preliminary investigation revealed something bigger than we'd imagined. A sophisticated scheme targeting specific customer demographics, mainly older clients, immigrants with language barriers, and young adults with their first accounts. People less likely to question authority or understand the fine print. The team was skeptical about sending someone undercover. White-collar investigations typically involved warrants, not wires, but traditional approaches had failed with Alpine. They were too careful with their paper trail, too smart about covering their tracks. We need someone on the inside, I argued during the strategy meeting. Someone who can track the money as it moves, see how they operate day to day. It's risky, Agent Ford said. If they catch you, we lose everything. They won't catch me. I had the confidence that comes from surviving combat deployments. I know accounting, I understand their world, and I can blend in. That someone became me, Carl Weber, recent transplant from Phoenix with decent credentials and an unassuming manner. Perfect for a mid-level accounting position at Alpine Financial's main branch. We spent 2 weeks building the identity, creating employment history, social media presence, even getting me a Phoenix driver's license. Getting hired was surprisingly easy. They were expanding rapidly, needed experienced accountants, and my resume was solid. The interview went smoothly. I talked about wanting a fresh start after my wife's death from cancer. That part wasn't entirely fake. What followed was months of methodical work, building trust while hunting for evidence. I'd arrive early, make coffee for the team, volunteer for extra assignments. Classic military reconnaissance, blend in, observe, document everything. I learned about Diana Reed's struggles with fertility treatments and her husband's job at the power company. Rob Martinez was proud of his daughter's science fair projects and worried about his mother's diabetes. Jennifer Walsh complained about her teenage son's grades. These weren't criminals, they were ordinary people processing paperwork without understanding the bigger picture. All while I was secretly documenting the elaborate system Ryan Mitchell had designed. It was brilliant in its simplicity, and that's what made it so dangerous. Small fees automatically generated on certain types of accounts, minus a $2.500 maintenance fee here, a $5 transaction processing charge there. Administrative charges applied and then reversed, but leaving a tiny percentage behind, systematic rounding in the bank's favor that most customers never noticed. Each method yielding modest sums that, when multiplied across thousands of accounts, produced millions. I ran the calculations during my lunch breaks, using skills honed over 23 years in forensic accounting. The average victim lost about $15, $20 per month. Not enough to cause immediate alarm, but over a year that's $180, $240 per person. Multiply that by 1,200 accounts, and you're looking at $216,000 to $288,000 annually, just from the basic fee structure. Then add the rounding schemes, the reverse charges that left residual amounts, the administrative errors that always favored the bank. The money flowed through a labyrinth of internal transfers before disappearing into investment accounts registered to shell companies. I traced the digital trail using techniques I'd learned in financial crimes training, combined with old-school accounting detective work my mentors had taught me decades ago. The average customer losing funds would never connect these tiny deductions to the luxury cars in the executive parking lot or the performance bonuses awarded quarterly. Ryan drove a $80,000 BMW. His assistant had a brand new Mercedes. The regional manager just bought a vacation home in Colorado. Meanwhile, customers like Mrs. Patterson came in monthly, confused about her balance. I know I had $347 in there last week, she'd say, clutching her checkbook register. Deanna would pull up her account with sympathetic efficiency. Sometimes pending charges take time to show up, Mrs. Patterson. See? Here's your grocery store charge from Tuesday, and there's the utility payment. Mrs. Patterson would leave, still confused but too embarrassed to argue further. The system counted on shame and self-doubt to keep victims quiet. By month 3, I had confirmed the scheme existed and identified the basic structure. By month 6, I had mapped out the key players and understood the money flow. Ryan was the architect, but he had help. Alan Cross at the Regulatory Commission was providing protection, warning them about potential investigations and helping them modify their methods when scrutiny increased. Cross was the real prize, a former Alpine board member who'd moved to the Federal Banking Commission 5 years ago. From there, he could monitor enforcement activities, provide early warnings, and even influence which institutions got audited. By month 9, I had documented the complete operation. The automated fee system, the shell company network, the regulatory protection scheme. I'd even identified which employees knew what they were doing versus those who were just following orders. Rob Martinez, Diana, Jennifer, they were innocent. They processed the paperwork they were given, applied the fees they were told to apply, and answered customer questions with the explanations they'd been trained to provide. The compartmentalization was perfect. Nobody below Ryan's level saw the complete picture, but Ryan knew exactly what he was doing. So did his immediate supervisor, the regional compliance officer, and the VP of operations. 7 people in total who understood they were stealing from customers. The operation was scheduled to conclude the following month. We had enough evidence to ensure convictions, enough documentation to recover the stolen funds, and enough insider knowledge to prevent similar schemes at other institutions. Then Ryan moved up the timeline by announcing my investigation. What I didn't know until later was that a routine security scan had flagged my after-hours access. Nothing conclusive, just patterns that raised questions. I'd been careful, but not careful enough. Military precision had served me well in documenting everything, but it had also created a digital signature that their monitoring software eventually noticed. Ryan, always protective of his system and paranoid about exposure, decided to eliminate the risk by making an example of me. He'd done it before. 3 employees in the past 5 years had been publicly accused of misconduct, forced to sign away their rights, and escorted out under security guard escort. The perfect way to remove potential threats while sending a clear message to everyone else. Don't ask questions. Don't dig too deep. Don't think too hard about what you're processing. Except this time, he picked the wrong target. After the arrests, I sat in a debriefing room surrounded by my actual teammates. The adrenaline crash left me exhausted, but there was also relief. 11 months of living as someone else, of pretending to laugh at jokes while documenting crimes, of building fake friendships while planning arrests. It takes a toll. You did good work, Garrison, Agent Ford said, sliding coffee across the table. 11 months of evidence gathered, 17 individuals identified in the scheme initially. Approximately $12 million siphoned from customer accounts over 3 years. The customers, I said, when do they get their money back? Asset recovery is already working on it. The tricky part will be identifying all 1,200 victims. Some probably never noticed the small amounts, like Mrs. Patterson, who came in monthly to question her statement, only to be patronizingly told she must be misremembering her balance. Or Mason Burke, a young teacher who was made to feel financially illiterate when he questioned a series of unusual charges on his first checking account. The elderly couple who couldn't afford medication because their account was mysteriously short every month. The single mother who thought she was terrible at managing money when her grocery budget kept disappearing. The system counted on shame and self-doubt to keep victims quiet. We'll need your testimony, Ford continued. This won't be quick or easy. Financial crimes rarely are. I nodded, already preparing for the long road ahead. The arrests were just the beginning of a case that would take months to fully prosecute. But I hadn't anticipated how the defense would fight back. What I didn't anticipate was how empty I would feel walking out of Alpine Financial for the last time. For all the wrongs committed there, I had built relationships. Artificial ones based on a false identity, but relationships nonetheless. Diana had shared her fertility struggles with me. Rob had shown me pictures of his daughter's science projects. Jennifer had asked my advice about her teenage son. They weren't complicit in the scheme, just oblivious to it, yet they had turned on me instantly when Ryan pointed his finger. That night, alone in my apartment, I removed the pictures of Carl Weber's family, stock photos of people I'd never met. I scrubbed off the subtle changes I'd made to my appearance, the slightly different hairstyle and glasses that made me look less like myself. I called my actual mother for the first time in months without having to use coded language. "Is it over?" she asked. "The undercover part is. Now comes the hard part." The trial preparations consumed the next 3 months of my life. Endless meetings with prosecutors, reviewing evidence, preparing testimony. The case had expanded beyond Alpine Financial to include 2 partner institutions implicated in the money trail. 23 defendants now, not 17. I was back to being Noah Garrison, federal agent, but I couldn't shake the ghost of Carl Weber. Sometimes I'd catch myself responding to that name or unconsciously adjusting my appearance the way I had for nearly a year. 6 weeks after the arrests, Ford knocked on my office door. Heads up. Ryan hired Marcus Cross. My stomach tightened. Cross was a defense attorney known for two things: exorbitant fees and ruthlessly discrediting witnesses. He'd destroyed FBI testimony before, turned solid agents into unreliable witnesses through aggressive cross-examination. They're claiming entrapment, Ford continued. Filed motions to suppress almost everything we gathered, arguing the undercover operation wasn't properly authorized. That's ridiculous. We followed every protocol. Of course we did, but they only need to create doubt. He hesitated. And there's something else. They're digging into your past, your wife's situation, suggesting you had a personal vendetta. Sarah had died 3 years ago, but Cross didn't care about the timeline. He was building a narrative that I manipulated evidence because of personal bias, that my grief had clouded my professional judgment. Later that evening, as I left the federal building, a familiar car pulled alongside me. Rob Martinez rolled down the window. Agent Garrison, can we talk? Against better judgment, I got in. I didn't know, he said immediately. About any of it, I swear. I believe you. Some of us have been questioned. They make it sound like we should have known, like we were all part of it. His hands fidgeted with his keys. My wife thinks I could be charged. We have a second baby coming in December. This was the collateral damage of financial crimes. Not just the direct victims, but the innocent bystanders caught in the aftermath. People like Rob who processed numbers without understanding their significance. If you cooperated honestly, you should be fine, I assured him. There's no evidence you knew what the fees were really for. There's something else. His voice dropped. Deanna got a call from Ryan last week, from jail. He was asking questions about you, what you accessed, who you talked to. My pulse quickened. What did she say? Nothing helpful, I think. But Noah, he's not the only one making calls. The week before the arrests, there were executives visiting from Westward Partners. They spent hours in closed meetings with Ryan. One of them keeps calling the office asking about server backups and archive access. Westward Partners was the investment firm we suspected was laundering the proceeds, but we hadn't been able to prove direct connection. If they were getting nervous, trying to destroy evidence, I thanked Rob for the information and recommended he speak directly to the prosecution team. As he drove away, I called Ford. We need to check on Alpine's external partners. They're getting nervous. 2 days later, a key witness, Alpine's former IT director, who had agreed to testify about how the fee system was programmed, was found unconscious in his home. Carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater. He survived but suffered memory impairment, affecting his recall of specific technical details. Just a coincidence, the local police said. The prosecution disagreed and placed 3 other witnesses in protective arrangements. I received additional security protocols, including a temporary relocation to a different apartment. They're desperate, Ford reassured me. This means our case is strong, but doubt had taken root. Our meticulous operation was under siege from multiple directions. Legal challenges, witness intimidation, media leaks questioning the investigation's integrity. The worst blow came during the preliminary hearing. Cross had somehow obtained internal emails between my supervisor and me from before the operation, emails discussing my personal interest in the case. Agent Garrison, Cross addressed me on the stand. Would you say your judgment regarding Alpine Financial was impartial and unbiased? Yes. He produced the emails with theatrical precision. Then perhaps you can explain why you wrote. And I quote, "I've seen this pattern before. It destroyed my family. I won't let it happen to others." The judge allowed the line of questioning despite prosecution objections. I could feel the jury's attention shift, see doubt creeping into their expressions. You created an elaborate fiction to infiltrate Alpine, Cross continued. Lived as Carl Weber for nearly a year. Isn't it possible that your desire for justice, or perhaps revenge for your wife's death, colored your interpretation of routine financial operations? No. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence you selectively gathered while operating under false pretenses, driven by personal grief rather than professional objectivity. By the time I left the stand, the damage was done. Cross had painted me as a vigilante with a personal vendetta, not a professional agent following evidence. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated Diana Reed. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Parking level 3, blue sedan, 10 minutes, come alone. Every training protocol warned against such meetings, but something told me this was important. I tucked my service weapon into my jacket and took the elevator down. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily silent. Deanna stepped out of her car, looking nothing like the friendly coworker I'd known. Her face was drawn, eyes constantly scanning our surroundings. "I shouldn't be here," she said without greeting, "but I can't sleep. I keep seeing Mrs. Patterson's face." Mrs. Patterson, the old woman who came in crying because her account was short for the third time. Ryan had me tell her she must be confused. Her voice cracked. She died 2 months later. Her son came in to close her account and mentioned she'd been skipping heart medication because she thought she couldn't afford it. I remained silent, letting her continue. "After they tried to fire you, I started looking more closely at the accounts I handled, the patterns you must have seen." She handed me a USB drive. This was supposed to be destroyed during the system upgrade last week. It's the original programming directive for the fee structure, with Ryan's annotations explaining exactly how to maximize revenue from low-attention customers. She passed over a legal notepad. And this is dates and times of calls Ryan made from detention, including 3 to someone named Jordan Pierce at Westward Partners. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I processed the paperwork when Mrs. Patterson closed her checking account to pay for her husband's funeral 4 years ago. I helped her set up automatic payments for her bills, including her prescriptions. I was part of the system that killed her." Her voice hardened. "And because yesterday, someone left a picture of my house on my car windshield. No message, just the picture. After Diana left, I immediately took the materials to Ford." The USB drive contained exactly what we needed. Direct evidence linking Ryan to the deliberate creation of the fraudulent fee system, with detailed notes calculating expected revenue from different customer demographics. "This changes everything," Ford said. "But we need to get Diana protection immediately." By the time we sent agents to her home, she was gone. Packed bag, cell phone left behind. Her husband said she'd received a phone call and left immediately, telling him to take their daughter to his mother's house upstate. The next morning, Cross withdrew several key motions in the case. By afternoon, 3 defendants had approached the prosecution about potential cooperation deals. "They're turning on each other," Ford said. Classic response when the evidence becomes overwhelming. For the first time in weeks, I felt the case solidifying again. The prosecution's confidence grew with each new cooperation agreement. Even the judge seemed increasingly skeptical of the defense's arguments. The breakthrough came when Diana's evidence led us to Jordan Pierce, CEO of Westward Partners. Faced with the documented communications and his firm's role in laundering the stolen funds, Pierce agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for reduced charges. His testimony revealed the true scope of the operation. It wasn't just Alpine Financial. They were running similar schemes at 4 other institutions across 3 states, all coordinated through Westward Partners and protected by Alan Cross at the Federal Banking Commission. Cross tried to flee the country when Pierce's cooperation became public, but was arrested at a private airfield. When confronted with evidence from multiple cooperating witnesses, he broke and started naming other officials involved in exchange for consideration. The system Cross had built to protect himself became his undoing. Once the first domino fell, everyone rushed to save themselves, creating a cascade of cooperation that exposed the entire network. When the verdicts came in, Ryan and 14 co-defendants were found guilty on all counts. They received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. Alan Cross, the mastermind behind the regulatory protection, got 20 years for corruption and obstruction of justice. But the true victory came after the sentencing, when the judge announced the creation of a comprehensive restitution fund. More than 1,200,000 people would finally recover what had been stolen from them, with interest. As the courtroom emptied, I approached the prosecution table where Lisa Stone was packing her files. "Diana?" I asked. "Safe?" She testified via video link from a secure location. Her cooperation was crucial to exposing the multi-state network. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions about the case, about my undercover work, about the sentences. I ignored them all and drove to Mount Olive Cemetery. Sarah's grave was exactly as I'd left it 3 months ago, but something felt different now. I placed fresh flowers on her headstone and sat on the marble bench we'd picked out together. "Mission accomplished," I said quietly. "They can't hurt anyone else now." The system they had created wasn't just dismantled, it was exposed to its foundations, preventing similar schemes from taking root elsewhere. The Federal Banking Commission underwent complete restructuring with new oversight protocols. Alpine Financial was dissolved, its legitimate assets transferred to institutions with verified ethical practices. My greatest satisfaction came months later when I personally delivered restitution checks to elderly victims like Mrs. Patterson's son, watching disbelief turn to tears of relief. Ryan, Cross, and their associates lost everything, their wealth, freedom, and reputations. But more importantly, they lost their power to harm others, not by dramatic confrontation, but by quiet, methodical justice, the kind Sarah would have been proud of. The kind that honors the badge and the oath I took when I traded my calculator for a gun at 45. Sometimes the best victories are the ones nobody sees coming. Justice doesn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes the most powerful victories come through patience, precision, and refusing to let criminals hide behind complexity. The real measure of a man isn't avoiding failure, but what he builds from the ashes of his worst moments.